الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So today inshallah we'll be going through the Tafseer of Surah إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها. This surah is known by different names. It is known as by the name of Surah Az Zalazalah or إذا زلزلت and some other names, and they all refer to the first verse in the surah. It talks about the earthquake that is mentioned in different ways. There is a specific mention not only in this surah but in other places in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that the earth will shake, and it will shake in a very vigorous way, and it is one of the signs of the akhirah, of the last hour coming closer. It's min alamat as-sa'a, and there is also a reference to earthquakes in general. When an earthquake happens, as Muslims, we realize that earthquakes, yes, they are a natural phenomenon. There's something that happens every once in a while, but at the same time, it can also come as a punishment for people. And we see this many times throughout history, especially previous nations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us about in the Quran, that some of them have been destroyed completely, wiped out. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to some of those nations in the past, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, هَلْ تَسْمَعُ لَهُمْ رِكْزًا, that do you hear even a whisper from them? And the answer is no, because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seizes and punishes a group of people, then many times their whole their athar, their footprint on earth, it gets wiped out. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إِنَّ بَطْشَ رَبِّكَ لَشَدِيدٌ, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seizes a wrongdoer or a nation or an individual, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very shadeed in the way that He seizes and punishes those criminals. And sometimes you find that a group of people have been punished, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves traces behind. So, for example, the Thamud, they were wiped out. That are mentioned, the people of Salih. The Thamud, they were wiped out. But yet today we still can see their masakin, their dwellings, their houses, and it's very well preserved. Same with Fir'aun and his armies. They were wiped out, but we can still see the remnants, what is left behind. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it in that way, it serves as a lesson for those who come after. That we look at these places and we understand that if we follow them in their footsteps, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish us in the same way that these people were punished. So it's not, from a Muslim perspective, these places should not become merely tourist attractions where people go and they take selfies and they take pictures and they laugh and so on. But the Prophet ﷺ specifically told us that when we witness these kind of places, it should be a means of reflection and pondering and really thinking about the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا, when the earth shakes with its vigorous or hard shaking, وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا, and the earth brings out what is inside it. The response of mankind at that time will be that human beings will say, "Malaha, what is wrong with this earth?" And if you're familiar with earthquakes, you know that scientifically they even grade the different earthquakes on a scale. And they say this is the magnitude of this earthquake. And you'll see that earthquakes, with time, it seems like they're becoming more and more frequent. And one of the very scary things about earthquakes is that even scientists themselves, they say, we cannot predict them. We cannot predict the earthquake. We say, yes, a probability, if there hasn't been an earthquake for some time and where the plates they meet, there's more likely for an earthquake to happen. But they cannot say that tomorrow there's going to be an earthquake. As opposed to the tufan, these winds and the hurricanes and so on, they can predict it more accurately because they see the way that the clouds move and so on. Yet, the earthquake, sometimes it seems like it comes from nowhere. And on top of that, depending on where the earthquake strikes, it has a different effect. And every time an earthquake strikes, especially the ones with higher magnitude, the destruction is devastating. So if the earthquake happens on land, then the buildings will be destroyed. If it happens out in the sea, then it creates massive waves that once they hit shore and they hit land, those waves destroy human life and they destroy property as well. And it is one of the many ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us understand how insignificant we are in a certain way. That we have all this technology, right? And people have all the money. Some countries, they spend millions of dollars, billions, even trillions of dollars in order to protect themselves. But yet, once an earthquake hits, then all that money, all that protection means very little. And the point that the scholars really emphasize in this surah is towards the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the way that we will come to see our deeds on Yawm al-Qiyamah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even a grain or a mustard seed mithqala dharra of a good deed will be shown on the day of judgment. In the same way that the grain or a mustard seed of a bad deed will be shown. And from this, the scholars, they emphasize again and again, first of all, that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never ghafil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never unaware of what happens. Even the mustard seed, some scholars, they say this even means an atom weight of good is preserved through the knowledge of Allah. The other thing that it emphasizes is, if this is the case, then we as Muslims, we should never belittle any good deed, and we should never think of any bad deed as insignificant. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "La tahqiranna min al-ma'rufi shay'an," that do not look down or belittle any part of good. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what part will help you enter Jannah. Which part of all these good deeds that will be the one good deed that saves you from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and grants you Jannah. We've all come across the story of the woman who was a prostitute, and later on in her life, one day when she happened to find herself thirsty, and she took that water from the well, and she gave that water. When she saw the thirsty dog, she gave that dog the water, and because of that one good deed, the Prophet ﷺ told us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave her all her past sins and shortcomings. And we find another story from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where a woman is punished for locking her cat in her house and not letting the cat roam free. She did not feed the cat, she did not look after the cat, and because of that, the cat passed away. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds her accountable for that act, and she ends up in the hellfire. So when this surah is being read and you come across this point, it should encourage us. Sometimes we see if someone asks for help, right? Let's say financial help, whether it is the masjid asking for donations, or if it's a brother that you know or a sister that you know, they're asking for a certain amount. And you check your pocket and you think to yourself, you know, I only have $5 or I only have $1. What will this help? It doesn't add to anything. But this is one of those things that if you have the sincerity and you do it for the sake of Allah, perhaps $5 that are given with sincerity is far greater than $100 that is given with a mind that is not present. And this point here is what made Abu Bakr as-Siddiq so great. The other companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to say that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he did not surpass us, he did not become better than us because he worshipped a lot. He was not from amongst the companions who prayed the most salah. He was not from amongst the companions who fasted the most. He was not from amongst the companions that read the Quran the most. But what he did was, he perfected his intention, his niyyah, so that whenever he did something, his sincerity was 100%. That when the Prophet ﷺ would ask, he would step up and he would commit 100%, and this is what made him, his iman, so strong and so firm and so heavy. And this is a part of this surah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. And at the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَرَوْا أَعْمَالَهُمْ, that they will be shown their deeds. So if you want to be happy on the Day of Judgment, to have the ultimate success, then you put in the effort now. When it comes to Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we're taught that many people will be losers on that day. They will lose out. And one of the biggest losers on the Day of Judgment is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran, the one who does good deeds, the one who works and thinks that he's doing good deeds, but in reality he's doing the opposite. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights this, asking the Prophet ﷺ, shall I not tell you about those people who will be the greatest losers on the Day of Judgment? And the verse tells us that the people who will be the greatest losers are the ones that do deeds, thinking that they're good deeds, but in reality it is bad deeds. So the question will be, how do we know which is a good deed and which is the bad deed? And it all comes back to two things, two main things that we emphasize time and time again. What makes a good deed is first of all sincerity, ikhlas. If you do something for the sake of Allah, then that is one of the conditions that are met. The second part to it, and these two have to go hand in hand, it is متابعة الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, that you follow the sunnah of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. So if you do those two things, and you follow in the footsteps of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, then you are close to this goodness, this success that we speak of. Another point to mention here is another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is asking his companions about the muflis, the one who is bankrupt. And this is another scary scenario. Before we spoke about the one who does good deeds, or the one who does deeds thinking that they're doing good, but in reality they're doing evil. Now we're talking about a person who is doing a lot of good deeds, but only to show up on the day of judgment without anything to show for it. What happens to that person? They come on the day of judgment and they have a lot of good deeds, but because of the way that they interact and they deal with people, those good deeds will all be taken away. And this emphasizes the importance of not only doing good deeds, but to preserve the good deeds. When you do a good deed, you want to make sure that this deed will remain with you and it will not go away. Because the reality is, brothers and sisters, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, that verily the good deeds, they remove the bad deeds, ذَلِكَ ذِكْرَى لِلذَّاكِرِينَ, and that is a reminder for those who remember. The scholars in Islam, they say that the opposite is true as well. That the opposite is true. Meaning that if you do a lot of good deeds, and then you follow it up by talking bad about people, committing ghiba, backbiting, fighting with people, all that good deed that you did will be taken away from you. So in Islam, it is not just sufficient to do good deeds, but we protect our good deeds by doing more good deeds. This is why if you've invested in your akhirah, let's say in the month of Ramadan, you've taken time out from work, you do i'tikaf, you read more Quran, you push yourself even more, then you don't want all that to go to waste. You don't want to Allah forbid that you pass away and Yawm al-Qiyamah you find out that all that was for nothing. So the way that we do as Muslims is we again follow in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, so that that good deed remains with us even after our death, and we have something to show for the effort that we put in. This surah is one of those short surahs in the Quran, but if a person understands it and reflects on it, it will change their outlook. They will take every opportunity, every single chance that they see, they will make it count. So it does not matter whether 10 people need help, they will try to help in whatever capacity they can these 10 people, because they're seeking the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and like we said, we do not know where that mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lies. And again, this surah, it highlights the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of even the weight of an atom, good or bad, it shows the infinite knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of every single thing that we do. So this leads us as Muslims, our actions to be the same both in open and in private. Because one of the problems that we have often, and this is a shortcoming, is that when we are in public, we show people a certain face. But when we are behind closed doors and we are by ourselves, we act in a completely different way. And this does not necessarily make a person a hypocrite. It's something that they need to work on, that we all need to work on. But if you really understand this surah, then that will counter this. That you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of every single moment, every single thing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring you back on the Day of Judgment. And even your body parts will testify against you. If you do not speak up, then your body parts will bear witness against you. And like many of these other surahs, there are so many things that can be said. But one final thing is that some of the scholars have highlighted, and inshallah we'll conclude with this point. It is that not only do the body parts bear witness against a person, but we are taught in Islam that the places, the physical places, the earth itself will testify on your behalf, either for you or against you. This is one of the reasons why, if you have noticed, when we finish our salah and we pray our sunnah prayers, what do? We tend not to pray in the same place that we pray, but we pray in a different place. We physically move from the place that we pray to another place. And this is following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because he told us that when you pray in a different place, it adds to the places where on the Day of Judgment the earth will bear witness for you and say, oh Allah, this person did a good deed on me or this physical place. And again, the opposite is true. That if you committed an evil act in a certain place, then that place will testify against you on the Day of Judgment. So inshallah, we'll keep it brief and we'll conclude here.